Carolyn Dube here. What's the play for today? Well, it's all happening in the art journal. Now on this page, there are lots of oopsies. Can you tell where they are? There's something on here that I did in the very beginning that I didn't even realize I did that was going to become something very important for the finished page and the message that this had for me. And boy, oh boy, did I need this message today. The background that you see here, those are gel prints that are the start of this art journal spread. And now I'm going to add a little bit of collaging on top of it. Now this is a page from a book from I think the 1940s with if you want schematics, if you wanted to build your own radio or TV or something like that. You can tell that it's not really that I understand exactly what's on that page, but I do love the type and I love the diagrams and the numbers on it, so that's why I grabbed it. Now, when you're gluing something into an art journal page, what's the best glue to use? Well, my opinion is whichever one you've got within arm's reach, whichever one you're most comfortable using. And for me, this is a glue stick. It was right there. It'll hold this stuff down and it's quick. That quick is going to be an important thing because, well, I'm impatient and I don't want to wait for stuff to dry. I wanted to get a real pop of color on here, so I grabbed some neon yellow. But here's the thing, as soon as I put it on there, I went, oh, it's not really exactly what I wanted. So I grabbed some lime green, and I took that neon yellow, mixed it in with that lime green, and really punched that thing up so it had a whole lot of brightness to it. And when I put that on the page, I realized, yeah, that's what I wanted. So that first color I chose wasn't a big, glaring, stupid mistake. Which, by the way, those are the kinds of things I used to say to myself when I do that kind of thing, until I really accepted that it was an oops, an outstanding opportunity presenting suddenly. You see, nothing that I do here on this page is the end of the world. It's not the end of the line, because I can simply put some more stuff on top of it. I can add another layer. So for me to get to the green that I wanted, the color, the pop that I wanted, I had to go through that first step, the oops, that neon yellow, to get here. And spoiler alert for you, as I'm doing this art journal page, you're going to see all sorts of oopsies happening. I'm going to let you know all the things that didn't go as planned, and you can see what I did about it and why it was such a great thing that those happened. As I'm grabbing the teal here, as I'm adding it on, I realize I want to get some pops of yellow somewhere, but not quite exactly with paint. I want a little different look to it. I want to be able to fill it in a little differently. So I'm going to use one of Marabou's art crayons, and it's basically this wonderful creamy stick of color that's blendable. So that means if I just rub my fingers on it, it blends it around, and that gave me just the pop of yellow that I wanted there. Now I thought by putting some white over that book text, it would give me just the look that I wanted, and guess what? It didn't. Yep, another oops happening here. But once I put a little bit of cobalt teal in there with it, I got a great color on there that I hadn't even been thinking about. And there's something else on this page that's already happened on there that I didn't realize, didn't notice, but you'll see how important it becomes a little bit later on this page. Before I picked up my art journal today, I was having the kind of day that gives therapists job security. Lots of things going on, and maybe you've had those kind of days too, where things feel completely out of your control. There are all these thoughts running through your head, things that, well, they aren't really helpful. And so that's when my art journal really helped me out, was with this next step. I decided to channel my mouthy inner teenager, and I'm putting I am not listening with a whole lot of attitude as the title for this page. Now this is one of the many phrases that are on my teenage angst stencil that I created for over at StencilGirl Products. And as I'm putting this on here, I thought it would really stand out, that beautiful magenta, that bright color, it would just pop. And when I lifted up the stencil, not so much. It doesn't really stand out there. So yep, yet another oops that happens here on this page. So if I know things aren't going to show up quite as much as what I expected, that takes a whole lot of the pressure off, because wherever I stencil it, nobody's really going to see it anyway, right? Now, as I put the third I am not listening onto this page, I noticed something that has been there almost the entire time that I hadn't seen up until now. And that's a big purple wonky shaped heart on the right side of the page, right above that first I am not listening. And wow, did that just hit me in the right way. Because that heart has been there through all the noise, all the things going on, all the I'm not listenings. It was there all along. And I'm going to take that as a reminder to listen more to my heart than all that other noise that happens throughout the day. And I want to do it in bright white. I want it to really stand out there. And guess what? This is about to be an oops. It's not going to be bright white because I put it right next to the orange paint on the palette and didn't even realize I'd picked up orange paint on the cosmetic sponge too. So now it's got kind of an orange sherbet look to it. So when I lifted up the stencil off of the I am, guess what? The eye had this big blob of paint on it. And that happened because I was using a lot of paint on that cosmetic sponge. And guess what? Every other I am not listening, that had stenciled perfectly without me even thinking about it. But on this one, it was imperfect. And I realized, hey, wait a minute, that's a sign from my muse. That's a reminder to me that sometimes listening to your heart, pushing out all the noise of the world, that can be a messy business. It's very imperfect, but also very perfect at the same time. So that little blob of paint there, I'm going to appreciate it for the message that it has. Every other time I stenciled this on here, I did the whole I am not listening. But for the heart, I wanted to say that I am listening. And so all I'm going to do is stencil it without the word not. I'm just going to skip that part of it. And that's one of the things that I love about stencils is you have the freedom to use some of it or all of it, and that's especially handy when working with words and phrases. Now, I like things that can do more than one thing. I like that flexibility and having that choice. So when I'm using Marabou's art crayons, I can use them straight as they are, just pushing them around, rubbing them in with my finger if I want, or I can also add a little bit of water to them. By adding the water and then doing the blending, it allows it to be even softer and that color to move even farther. Now, I want to give you some really useful information here. I want to give you something that will dramatically impact what you do. I want to share with you something you may not have ever heard before. And that is, if you add water to stuff, it takes it longer to dry. Yeah. Now, you might be thinking, that's pretty obvious, Carolyn. But apparently not to me, because you see, I want everything to be nice and dry to do some pen work in a moment, but I'm having fun playing with the water, so yeah, things are getting wetter. Now I'm bringing in a fountain pen here to outline, go around some of the letters that I stenciled because, well, because of the way I stenciled them, they're really hard to read. But once I do that little light black outlining over parts of it, those words are really going to pop. Now, a fountain pen can do a lot of things. It can take a lot of abuse, but it really doesn't work well over things that are wet. The ink does not seem to go down on wet areas. And by the way, anything that's wet can ruin an awful lot of pens. That's why I like to use a fountain pen. Those seem to take the most abuse. Now you'll notice that I am cleaning off my pen on my rag there. I'm writing on plain paper to try and get the ink flowing again, all that kind of stuff. Now, of course, I could just give this a little while and let things dry so I didn't have this problem. But yeah, not feeling very patient. And after the day I'd been having, I had lots of feelings to journal out here, lots of things. I just needed to kind of get them out of my system. So scribbled journaling is perfect for it. So I don't really have to read it. I just need to get those feelings out here onto the page. Now, even though this was still damp in a lot of places, the pen was working just fine for me. Up until I started on this part up here. And all of a sudden, the paper ripped. Yep, another oops, an outstanding opportunity presenting suddenly. Because once it started to rip, I realized how fun would it be if I could make it rip on purpose. So I purposely went through there trying to pull more of it up. So now I've got an extra little pop of orange just up at the top. The words I am listening need to be outlined too, but for those I chose to use a white pen to do that. And the reason why? Well, I decided to go with a good guys versus bad guys kind of theme. So the black lines went around sort of the uglier thoughts or dealing with those, and the white lines went around the thoughts that I want to embrace, the part that I do want to listen to, the heart that is. Now the heart there is pretty abstract, so I want to define it a little bit. I want to make it stand out, and guess what? The first couple of things that I do with it, I just don't like. So I decide to bring in some white paint and really make it stand out. And when I do that, I realize, oops, I don't want it to stand out that much. I don't like those hard lines around it. But it's not the end of the world. It's not a mistake. It's simply an outstanding opportunity presenting suddenly. Because by the time I'm done doing all the different things that I try here, I end up with a little bit of a shading going around it that gently sort of highlights it, but isn't a bold in-your-face kind of thing. To add a little touch of pattern, I grabbed a stencil that I created called Kandinsky's Trees, and I'm just stenciling part of it over here on the corner. I wanted a really bright, vibrant teal right there that would really stand out against that orange. I bet you can probably sense that that's not how it's going to turn out. Yep, we've got another oops about to happen here. It just didn't look the way I expected. But this is art journaling, so all that means is add some more layers to it. So I thought that super bright electric green that I'd mixed up, that would definitely be able to pop this up. But nope, yet another oops happening here. Sometimes I will go through a string of oopsies in a row before I get to the end result that makes me happy. Now the paint is definitely still wet, I just put it on there, so I need to use something to put the white around it that can handle wet paint. And to do that, I'm going to use a fine liner here. This is basically an empty tube with a very fine point in it that has white paint in it. Now they have a couple of different shapes of bottles that you can get the fine liner applicators in, and whether you like one that's more pen-shaped or if you want one that's shaped a little more like a bottle of paint, it's totally personal preference, because they both do the exact same thing. Now when you get these bottles, they are completely empty and you can fill them with whatever you want. And as long as it can squirt out the tip, you can stick it in there. In this case, I used some fluid white paint. That's what I've got in there for this bottle. And I've got a full supply list of everything that I've used in this video over on the blog at acolorfuljourney.com. Well, thanks so much for joining me for today's play. If you've been enjoying this video, I'd so appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more of my videos, hit that subscribe button. That way you'll know as soon as I've got a new one out. And of course, you can find more of what I'm up to over on my blog at acolorfuljourney.com, including my free workshop called Permission to Play. Well, thanks so much for letting me be a part of your colorful journey.